Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Krishna Mataji.
Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna. Dandavad Pranam. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Mataji, Radha Pranam, Jasa Prabhupada.
Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome, dear devotees, to our Bhakti Vriksha class on this Saturday. We are going to do Brahma Samhita that we are scheduled to do on every Saturday. So we will pick up verse number 10 from the 5th chapter of Brahma Samhita, which actually is the only chapter that we have with us these days. So we will do that after these short prayers to the Spiritual Master. You can sing along. Om Ajnanatimarandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mano Abhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam dadati swapadantikam vandeham Sri Guru Shri Yuta Padkamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Sya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Gaur. So I'm going to start sharing my screen so that you can read along. Chapter 5th of Brahma Samhita, and we are going to do text number 10. So while I was doing my prayers, I had recited a verse from Brahma Samhita. If you can take your chats and your touchpads and your phones or dial pads, whatever you're using, and if you can tell me what words I recited, what was the number of the verse. And while you're doing that, I'd like to offer my humble obeisances to those watching us on Facebook, which includes Lepai Patel Prabhu and Aarti Mataji. Tanmatra pranams to you both. And let me just go and look at the chat and see what answers do we have here. Okay, so I've got only one answer from Sukomal Radhe Mataji, and that is that we did verse number 1. So that is a verse that by now, it should be very familiar to you because we have been doing Brahma Samhita for quite a few months now. Ishvara Parma Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Okay, so now be ready next to your pads because I will ask you every now and then. Okay, so let's see. Brahma Samhita 5.10. Shaktiman Purusha Soyam Lingarupi Maheshwaraha Tasmena Virabhulinge Mahavishnu Jagatpatihi Shaktiman Purusha Soyam Lingarupi Maheshwaraha Tasmena Virabhulinge Mahavishnu Jagatpatihi Shaktiman Purushah Soyam Lingarupi Maheshwaraha Tasmena Virabhulinge Mahavishnu Jagatpate Shaktiman Purusha Soyam Lingarupi Maheshwaraha Tasmena Virabhulinge Mahavishnu Jagatpatihi. So let's do a little Sanskrit knowledge game. So what do you think is the meaning of this word Jagatpatihi? Take out your pads and give me the answer. Jagatpatihi. What do you think that means? And let's see what answers. Don't feel shy. Give whatever comes to your mind. There are no marks for this one. All right, so I'm getting some answers here. Ruler of the world, father of the universe. Any more? Any more guesses? Okay. And what do you think would be the meaning of Avirabhut? And there was one more answer for the previous question. That was Jagat Pratyay means absolute truth, ruler of the world. Okay, now Avirabhut. Think about it. And if you don't know, then write DK. Don't know. Give that as an answer. All right. Don't know, don't know, don't know. That's a tough one, huh? Anybody knows? Avirabhut. So that would be one new word that we will learn today. Avirabhut. Okay, so let's go down to the synonyms. So Shaktiman Purusha Soyam. So Shaktiman means joined to his female consort. We wouldn't have thought that as an answer, right? So Shaktiman, joined to his female consort. Purushaha means a person. Saha means he. Ayam means this. Ayam, this. Lingarupi in the form of the male generating organ. Maha Ishvaraha, which will become Maheshwara when you combine the two. So Maha Ishvara means controller and or the Lord, and Maha means the big one. Maha Ishvara Shambhu, the Lord of this mundane world. So can you tell me, in this mundane world, it says this is a Maha Ishvara, is a big controller. Can you give me some examples of controllers in this material world? Any controllers in this material world? Type it out. Any controllers in the material world that you have come across? Mahamaya, very good. Managers, politicians, Maya, senses, intelligence. And good answers, right? So now he's talking about the Maha Ishvara. These are controllers, definitely. There is a traffic controller. There are computers that control you. And then, of course, here we're talking about Maha Ishwar. So this is the Maha, the big Ishwar. Shambhu, the Lord of this mundane world. Right? And then Tasmin means in that. Avirabhut. So we had talked about Avirabhut, manifested. Avirabhut means manifested. So this is an important word here. Avirabhut. Actually, it's a very important word for this particular words. Manifested. Linge in the manifested emblem. Mahavishnu is Mahavishnu, and Jagatpati in this particular verse, it is translated as Jagatpatihi, the Lord of the world. And when he's the Lord of the world, he also has got some duties. When you are the Lord of somebody, then you also have to protect them. Okay? So the Lord is also our protector. So we have been talking in the past few chapters about the creation process, right? And we started in verse number 1 as Krishna is the cause of all causes, Sarva Karana Karanam, like that. So he is the cause of this creation. And now we are talking about creation. And why are we talking about creation here? Because any reason you think, why are we talking about creation here? Any thoughts why we have seen so many verses? Why do you think we are talking about creation? Okay, I will give you another question. Tell me the different kinds of creators you know. Right. Good answer, Chitra Mataji. Because Brahma's primary duty. This is Brahma Samhita. This is the Samhita. This is the verses that Brahma has spoken. So Brahma has spoken these words, and he's the engineer of the of this universe. And so he has just been born. And from where is Brahma born? Question for you. Where is Brahma born? From where is he born? Good. I'll wait for more answers. Same answer. Okay. Any other volunteers who are going to give this answer? Anybody else knows from where Brahma is born? You've seen pictures of Brahma? From where is he born? Right? So from the navel of not Mahavishnu. Which Vishnu? From the navel of which Vishnu? Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Exactly right. Okay. So Brahma has been born from the navel of Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And he's all alone. Imagine you're all alone in this universe and you have no idea where I came from. So he starts walking down towards the navel, and he doesn't see, although he walks there, one would think that you're on the top and you're walking downwards and you should hit Garbhodakshay Vishnu and on your way back, but he doesn't see that. And so the fact is that not anybody and everybody can see Mahavishnu like that, or Garbhodakshay Vishnu, for that matter, any Vishnu like that. You need to have the necessary qualification. That is why, Vishnu is in everything and still we don't see him. He's here in this material world. Anta pravashta bhati. He enters this universe. So he doesn't see him. But then Krishna, being all merciful to him, he says two words, ta and pa. Tapa, tap. So he understands that I have to do some austerity. So sits down and he does tapasya. And in the end, then the Lord appears before him and teaches him how to create this material world, initiates him through his flute sound, and then Brahmaji recites these verses. And he talks about creation because now he remembers from his previous impressions how it's to be done. So, and then he's glorifying the Lord. So these steps of creation that we are going through are actually doing nothing but glorifying the Lord, as you are the cause of all the causes. You are the original cause of everything. Okay? So that's the reason we are talking about a creation. So this is that creation. Atra sarga visargascha sthanam poshanamutaya manvantari shanukata nirodho muktir ashrayaha. So there are 10 topics that are discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam, and one of them is sarga, and then there is visarga. So there's primary creation, and then there is secondary creation. Right? So if in the primary creation I create flour and I create water, then you can go and in the secondary creation you can mix them together and you can create some shapes out of it, like that. So there's primary creation, there's secondary creation, there is tertiary, third level creation also. So like that it goes, various levels of creation are described in the Bhagavatam. Here, of course, Brahma is the engineer of this world, of this universe, so he's talking about that. So let's go and look at the translation. And remember, it is Brahma Samhita. So we're going to go very slow on this. Okay, it's not an easy scripture. And the more you read this, the Brahma Samhita, and more you come in touch with the Brahma Samhita, the more you realize that how superior Brahma is to us. We are also there with bloated heads, most intelligent people. Um, my mother-in-law used to say this interesting thing. when like, she was once talking about that people, we use our own intelligence and we do stupid things because we are limited in that. So she was saying that everybody thinks that I'm very intelligent and they are actually not. And so she says that when Lord created intelligence, she's talking about creation. So when Lord created intelligence, the substance intelligence, so intelligence was one, like, one piece of intelligence like that. And he took that intelligence, he broke it, he divided it into two halves. Now, the first half of the total intelligence he gave to you, and the other half he divided to all the other people. So that's what we all think, like that. But as we sit down to read Brahma Samhita, we understand that we are nothing, What to talk about the concepts that Brahma is talking about? We can't even understand the Sanskrit he's using because, and you will notice that especially in the Srimad Bhagavatam, when Brahma comes and starts praying, the prayers are heavy. The Sanskrit there is heavy. So we'll go slow and we might repeat, go over, several times, maybe repeat over several weeks or more than a week, like that will go. Okay. So slow is the word over here. And we'll start. In the transcendental atmosphere, Paravyoma, where spiritual majesty preponderates, there is present Sri Narayan, who is not different from Krishna. Mahasankarshan, subjective plenary facsimile of the extended personality of Sri Narayan, is also the divine plenary portion of the propagatory embodiment of Sri Krishna. By the power of his spiritual energy, a plenary subjective portion of him, eternally reposing in the neutral stream of Viraja, forming the boundary between the spiritual and mundane realms, casts his glance at creation unto the limited shadow potency, Maya, who is located far away from himself. Thereupon, Shambhu, Lord of Pradhan, embodying the substantive principle of all material entities, who is the same as Rudra, the dim reflection of the Supreme Lord's own divine glance, consummates his intercourse with Maya, the efficient, mundane, causal principle. But he can do nothing independently of the energy of Mahavishnu, representing the direct spiritual power of Krishna. Therefore, the principle of Mahat, or the perverted cognitive faculty, is produced only when the subjective plenary portion of Krishna, namely the prime divine avatar Mahavishnu, who is the subjective portion of Sankarsana himself, the subjective portion of Krishna, is propitious towards the active mutual endeavors of Maya, Shiva's consort Sakti, and Pradhan, or the principle of substantive mundane causality. Agreeably to the initiative of Mahavishnu, the consort of Shiva creates successively the mundane ego, ahankara, the five mundane elements, bhutas, namely space, etc., their attributes, tanmatras, and the limited senses of the conditioned soul, jiva. The constituent particles in the form of pencils of effulgence of Mahavishnu are manifest as the individual soul jivas. This will be elaborated in the sequel. Okay, so we come to the end of reading this verse, and I'm bringing this purport here into your view so that you can see the purport a little bit clearly. Maybe let me see if I can go a little bit further. Yeah. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is look at this. I hope you heard what was being said. Look at this and type and tell me what are the words that are new to you? What are the words in this text that are new to you? Keep them coming. Okay, Paravyoma, says Sukumal Radhe Mataji. Everybody else knows everything? Or taking your time writing? All right, so I'll explain Paravyoma and the class will be done. Okay, Maha Sankarshan, says Sutapa Mataji. All right, Pradhan. Okay, 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 Aruni, got your message. Ahankar, Tanmatras. Okay, go ahead. What else? Keep them coming. Mahat. Okay. Jivas versus divas. So do we have divas here? Diva. Shiva's consort. Okay. Any more? Viraja. Okay. Good. Facsimile or facsimile. Okay. Everything else is good? Should we get started then? Okay. So I will first explain some concepts, and then in the course of those discussions or those monologues, these concepts and these terms that you have mentioned are going to come up. Okay? So just be alert to see when your word comes up in the discussion. So here we are talking about the cause. Okay? We are talking about the cause of creation, creation itself. And then we had talked about that whenever there is something, there are, we talked about causes, right? Different types of causes. Does anybody remember what were the different types of causes we talked about? There were two that we talked about more, like giving more emphasis. For anything, we had two causes. Efficient cause, very good. Sukumaladi Mataji. And what else? Okay. Yes, then there's a different, yeah. There's a different word for non-efficient, but I know what you mean. And I didn't bring that other different word, so no negative points for you, right? So today I'm going to talk a little bit about one more concept in the terms of the cause of anything, and this is we know that that um, the Greek philosophy actually the Greek philosophy resembles the Vedic philosophy. There are some commonalities there. For example, there was a concept of guru is there among the Greek also. Can you give me an example of any Greek guru and disciple combination? Very famous. Any famous Greek gurus that you remember from your school, college days? Those who studied history, European history, civilizations. Any Greek philosophers, names you remember? Any names coming? What about Socrates? There you go. Okay, those are gods. Yeah. Plato, very good. Yeah. Okay, right? So very Plato definitely is one. Aristotle is one, right? Yes, Socrates, right? So we call them Shukrat, Socrates, Arastu, Aristotle, like that, right? So these are famous, guru disciple combinations that are there. So there are some commonalities there, and after all, there will be some commonalities with the Vedic philosophy because everything comes from Vedic because it's the oldest philosophy, and the other philosophies are relatively new because we talk about millions of years, and not only millions of years, we talk about cycling through many millions of years. I mean, Brahma himself lives for trillions of years. So what to talk about, a 300, 400, 500 century gap like that. So anyway, Aristotle used to talk about causes, and he said, the first cause is, of course, the material cause that you talked about, right? So here also in the creation, we have to think about what is the material cause, what is that material there, right? So, so there's a material cause. For example, I took the example of a chair, right? Last time when we were discussing this during the week. So there's a chair, and so can you tell me what would be the material that goes into making a chair? Okay, wood. Only wood goes. What else do you know? It's screws. Okay. Anything else? Chisel. Need a person. Very good. Anvil. Okay. How will you cut the wood? Material. How will you cut the wood? Concept and design. Very good. Saw. Right. So you see, while you're building the chair, there are so many things that are coming into picture. So the material cause is going to be the wood that you're using, the glue that you're using, the paint that you're going to put on the chair, and so on and so forth, right? So those are known as the material cause. Now, if you keep all of them together in your garage, a chair is not going to get created by itself. So it has to be somebody who has to extend something there, right? Effort. So that person is known as the efficient cause. So there's a material cause, there's an efficient cause. We had already talked about these two causes, right? Now there is a third thing also, and which Niralpa and Khyati Prabhu have highlighted there, and which is the concept and the design. Because if you're standing there with a saw in your hand and there is wood in front of you, how will you know what is a chair? What is a table? How is a chair different from a table? So you see that concept that the chair is like this. It's got four legs. There's a seat area. There's a back thing there. So there is a concept. There's a design. There is a form which is there. So you see that the concept chair is there. If the concept chair is not present, you cannot create a chair. The concept has to be there. Similarly, the concept table has got to be there. Unless and unless that concept table is not there, you cannot create a table. So this is known as a formal cause. So there's material cause, there is efficient cause, there is formal cause, right? And the third thing, the fourth cause, which Sukumal Radhe Mataji had said, non-efficient cause, and that was when efficient cause is when somebody does something, and non-efficient cause is when somebody did not do something. For example, there's an accident, right? There's an accident, and why did that accident happen? Because the driver was negligent. Negligent means he was not paying attention. So he was not doing something that he was supposed to do. And because of not doing something that he was supposed to do, something happened. So now he is the cause of that accident. Somebody's dying, he's the cause of that. Not doing something is also a cause. And that is known as the remote cause, right? So remote causes, there are four kinds of causes which are there in our material world. Okay. So now let's go and go back to our verse from Brahma Samhita. Slowly we'll go there, and let's look at these sentence there. Let's look at this purport. And am I sharing? Yes, I am, right? So here we said in the translation, the person embodying the material causal principle with the great lord of this mundane world, Maheshwara Shambhu, in the form of the male generating organ, is joined to his female consort, the limited energy Maya, as the efficient causal principle. The Lord of the World, Mahavishnu, is manifest in him by his subjective portion in the form of his glands. Okay, so let's go further. In the transcendental atmosphere, Paravyoma. So that was one of the terms that you wanted to know, right? What is Paravyoma? Vyoma means atmosphere or sky, right? So there's a material and then there is the spiritual. So in the spiritual sky, right? So that because it's spiritual, so it is called para. So apara means material, and anything which is spiritual is called para. So para vyoma means the sky which is beyond, para, over there, beyond the material. So beyond the material is the spiritual, which is called paravyoma. Okay, so aparavyoma, paravyoma. Now, separating the paravyoma and the material world. So separating the spiritual world and the material world, there is a river. There is a river known as Viraja. Okay, there's a river called Viraja. So that was also a question. You did not know what was Viraja. So Viraja is a river that separates the material and the spiritual. And that river is also known as causal ocean. Causal ocean. Karan Sagar. Causal ocean. Okay? So causal ocean or the Viraja river separates the material and the spiritual. Okay? Now, there is one Vishnu that is lying on it, on that. Okay? So in the transcendental atmosphere, Paravyoma, where spiritual majesty preponderates, right? So spiritual majesty is over there, right? And preponderates. And now this is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's English, like very, very British and difficult, because those times scholars used to write very difficult words. And the reason for that was that these kind of Vedic literatures were read. These kind of Vedic literatures were read only by the scholarly people, whose job was to sit and study from morning till evening. So that's why it was not difficult for them. Like if he's using these words, if he's translating, they were very well learned. So now we are sitting here and we struggle with all this. What's preponderates? What do you think is preponderate? You want to make guesses? Anybody wants to make guess? Right? So you have to be an English teacher to know that. If you're from engineering background, might not know like that, right? So what I'm trying to point over here is that there's a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, and he says that, Manda Sumanda Matayo, Manda Bhagya Upadritaha. So he's describing the qualities of the people in Kali Yuga, and he says we are Mand. So you see, Mand means we don't have enough intelligence. We have to sit with the dictionary every now and then. When some difficult word comes up, we are totally and we are completely lost, right? So here, when we are talking about the spiritual atmosphere, right? So let me just start sharing that with you again. So here and let me just bring it up so that you can also read along with me. It says that in the transcendental atmosphere, Paravyoma, where spiritual majesty preponderates. So spiritual majesty, okay, so now my question to you, take out your pads quickly. So in the spiritual world, who is the spiritual majesty in the spiritual world? Who do you think is the majesty there? Any answers coming up? Krishna says Sukumal Radhe Mataji, and that is correct. Okay, so in the spiritual world, right, in the spiritual world, Paravyoma, where spiritual majesty, which means where Krishna, and what does Krishna do? He preponderates. Preponderates means that there are several meanings to preponderate. It basically means that, it's something is large, or, largeness, either large by way of, the size, or a large in terms of the size or in numbers, right? For example, you can say that the ocean was preponderated by seals. So there were lots of seals, a lot of whales. Or, by the sea beach, the sea beach was, or the gulls were preponderating the sea beach. There was many seagulls over there. So by way of numbers, they are good, right? Or sometimes the quality is also there, very, is predominant there, right? For example, in a Brahmana, you will say the mode of goodness preponderates. And another meaning of the word preponderate is that the person is of high importance, very high importance, right? So when we take of all these things, that, being very high in quality, and then great in numbers, or, great in quantity, or great in importance, then we know that because Krishna is only one, so we can't talk about great in number. So spiritual majesty, right, is Krishna, and the one and only one Krishna, and then he's the most important person there in the spiritual world. That's why everybody just serves Krishna, right? That would be taking the importance part of it. Another way of looking at it is like, spiritual majesty. If you take spiritual majesty in terms of spiritual being higher than material, then we know that in the spiritual world, everything is just spiritual. The quantity wise, everything is spiritual. So if you're checking out everything in the spiritual world, everything is spiritual, right? So in numbers also, it is there, the spiritual. There's nothing which is material actually in the spiritual world, right? So he's saying that in the transcendental atmosphere, there is present Sri Narayan, who is not different from Krishna. So that's fine, because when Krishna expands, then, expansions are the same as him. Mahasankarshan, subjective plenary facsimile of the extended personality of Narayan, right? So facsimile or facsimile, is the The word fax comes from there. So facsimile means looking the same, right? Plenary means full. Now here is where we get totally confused when we try to take the concepts that we have in this material world by saying plenary, right? Plenary, we use the word plenary in our mundane world also. For example, we will say, this is the plenary session of the parliament. This means that everybody who is a member of the Raj Sabha, Lok Sabha, or what upper house, the lower house, everybody has to be present so that attendance is full, right? Everybody is there, right? And if they are not there, then only a part is there. Right? So now the problem here is, with our understanding, is that if I take off my ear and set it aside over there, then I am here, but minus the ear. I created something from myself. How can I create things from myself? I can only chop them and I can put them there. So I chop off 2 ears, and there are 2 ears over there, and say, oh yeah, I expanded. And there's ears there, but then I'm less than 2 ears. So I am not complete. I am not plenary there. And nor is that other part plenary because it's only 2 ears. Where are the eyes? Where are the hands? Where are the legs? It's all gone, right? But when Krishna expands, so here is Krishna, and you get another Krishna there. And that portion is a plenary portion. That portion will have everything. So the concept of portions, where we think in the mundane world is something is being divided, portion means you're dividing it thing. But when it comes to Krishna, it doesn't happen. There's no division. He's able to just, have another and another and another. So one might say that if Krishna expands, right, and becomes, so first expansion that Krishna does, he expands and becomes Balram. And Balram is known as the plenary expansion of Krishna, right? Now, if you look at Balram and if you look at Krishna, right, are there certain things that are missing in Balram that are there in Krishna? Type it out, please. If you see Balram, what do you miss? You can text to Sutapa and ask her to write it down. Be creative, Vindhyavali Mataji. You have WhatsApp. You can WhatsApp to Sutapa and she'll write it there. Yeah. Color is missing. Garima says color is different. What else is different? He does not have the 4 things that Krishna carries. What are the 4 things that Krishna carries? Vindhyavali Mataji is pointing out. She's gesturing. She's saying the flute. It's not there. Okay. She's saying the feather is not there. Does Krishna, now here's a question, does Krishna carry the conch, the chakra, and the gada? When you see Krishna in your temple, does Krishna carry the Shankh, Chakra, and Gada? Do you see him with the Shankh, Chakra, and Gada? No, says Sutta Mataji, right? So what is it then? They are talking about plenary portions. They're talking about completeness. They're talking about facsimiles. They should be exactly the same. But then things seem to be missing. You don't see them. And that's what it is. They are there, but we don't see them. And so further down, when Krishna becomes Vishnu through his subsequent expansion, then Krishna becomes Vishnu, then these 4 things suddenly come. The Shankh, Chakra, Gada, but then the flute is gone and the Morpank is gone, right? So what happens is that Krishna will expand and these expansions are complete in themselves, but what part gets manifested before your eyes? Krishna will manifest himself in whatever form that the devotee wants to see him. So when people look at Krishna in a very majestic form, and they want to look at him in a very majestic form, and they are thinking of him as all powerful and the controller, then they are presented with the Vishnu form of the Lord, right? Those who want to envision Krishna in the form of a tortoise, then they will see a tortoise. So there will be no flute, like that. So, we have to remember the plenary portions are plenary; they are complete in themselves, but we might not be able to see them as much as we will see as much as we are entitled to. And this is very, very important because you will come across scriptures. You'll come across scriptures and you will see descriptions of this material world, and you will see dimensions. You will see dimensions which, if we apply our traditional science or scientific knowledge based on the dimensions that are provided, we should be able to see certain things, right? And what I mean by that is, suppose you're living in a house, okay? Suppose you're living in a single story house, and then there is a 3-story house in front of you. You'll be able to see it? If you're living in a, yes or no? Type quickly, yes or no? If you're staying in a single story house and then there is a 3-story house in front of you, from your house, will you be able to see it? Yes or no? Karima says yes, right? Because from this position, you can always see something which is taller than you, right? So from here, you'll be able to see this tall building, right? Now you are here, okay? This is the tall building and there is a small building behind it. Will you be able to see it? Yes or no? So Komal Radhe Mataji says no, and she's right. Garima says no, and she's right. Okay. So you see, what happens is when an object which is really tall comes closer to your eyes, then your vision is cut off. Okay. Now, suppose I have got a building in front of me which is this high. I'm able to see it. If the building next to it is shorter and I'm standing over here, I will not be able to see this building. Okay. But if this building is taller, then standing here, I'll be able to see this one. The first building might obscure a little part of the building behind it, but whatever is the difference in the height, I'll still be able to see it. Okay. So now the Shastras, when they define our universe, when they describe our, there are 14 planetary systems when they are in the middle layer. In the middle layer, they will define that there is a mountain of gold, which is very, very tall, very, very tall, 800,000 miles or something like that in height. And there are many more mountains there, but all of them are shorter in height. And I'm somewhere here on the Earth planet. So from here, I should be able to see this mountain of gold. But when you go out, go look at the mountain, you don't see any mountain. So these kind of statements in the Shastras just boggle our mind and we just go nuts. Like, the Shastras are wrong. Show me the proof. Show me. The science always says, show me. But Prabhupada says, you don't have the entitlement to see. So up and until you don't get the entitlement to see certain things, you will not be able to see it. So this is something that we have to understand, right? So if I am worshiping the Lord in my mood, and my mood is that he is, the Kurma avatar, he's like a tortoise. That's all my entitlement is going to be. So when the Lord appears in front of you, although he might have everything, but you will only see that much there as you are entitled to. So it's very, very important. Entitlement will make, according to your entitlement, you will see or not see the things. And also, according to your entitlement, you'll be able to go to places or not be able to go to places. So here, when we do the travel doesn't happen because you purchased a ticket and you sit on a plane and you go, as we do here, but travel of the soul from one planet to another planet just doesn't happen that the soul now gets some subtle aeroplane and just sits on it and goes to any planet that the soul wants. No, you need to have the proper entitlement to be able to go to those places. Okay, so this concept of entitlement is very, very important here, right? Whereas in science, it doesn't matter. Yeah, you look into a microscope, anybody, if the microscope is powerful enough, anybody and everybody in the room will be able to see the same thing because it's there in front of your eyes, right? Like that. So keep that in mind about manifestation and non-manifestation. So Mahasankarshan, subjective plenary facsimile of the extended personality of Sri Narayan, is also divine plenary portion of the propagatory embodiment of Krishna. So what happens is that from Krishna, Balram expands. And then from Balram, we have got four that come out. We have, that Vasudev, Anirudh, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, right? And then from the Sankarshan, another force that comes out. So like that, this expands. So the Chaturvyu, and I will take that as a separate subject. It's not something that I can finish in this time if I get started on that, right? So I'll take it as a separate subject and have some diagrams, etc., for you so that you understand. But here, all that we have to keep in mind as far as this is, they're trying to just trace the flow in the sense that how from Krishna and from all his expansions, etc., now you have come to Narayan, who's there in the causal ocean, who's lying in the causal ocean, right? So we have seen pictures of Narayan in the causal ocean. And so they are just tracing where he has come. And because Brahma Samhita starts with Ishvara Parma Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha, Anadir Adir Govinda, he has no Anadir, he doesn't have any beginning or an end, Anadir Adir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karanam. So we are trying to prove here that he is the cause of everything. He's the cause of everything. So similarly, when we talked about a chair and we talked about the different kinds of causes, right? Can anybody write down, or all of you, write down and tell me what are the four causes that we said will be, for a particular object that we take or a creation that we take. What are the four causes that we have for a creation? There's material cause. Okay. Efficient cause. Very good. The concept or the formal cause. Yeah. The person is the efficient cause. All right. And the remote cause, right? So you see that we said that there are cause for everything, right? So similarly, Krishna is the cause of everything. Krishna will be the cause of anything that is created. So let's look at the chair. How will we look at a chair and say Krishna is the cause of the chair? How will we do that? Material, from where does material come? It comes from trees. From where do trees come? They come from the seed. From where do the seeds come? From where did the first seed come? So Krishna has to create the first seed. So Krishna is the material cause, right? And then efficient cause. Efficient cause is the man hammering away, right? So from where does the man get the energy to hammer away? So it can be traced back again to Krishna as the source of all energies, like that, right? And then the formal cause, like, the facts that I'm able to think about, the fact that, I have the intelligence that I can rake and come up with concepts of a chair. Earlier there were simple chairs. Now we have rocking chairs and, different kinds of stools and whatever it's called, bean cushions or whatever they're called, right? So we have all those kinds of things now. And so why it is coming from intelligence. In fact, who created the intelligence, who gave you the intelligence, you can trace it back to Krishna. So it comes from Krishna, like that, right? And then of course, when you don't do anything, right? How is Krishna the cause of that? Can you give me an example from Shastra? Anybody wants to quote a shloka from the Shastra of how Krishna becomes the remote cause of things that we have? How do you think Krishna has a hand in somebody not Okay, Priyanka Mataji, you'll have to elaborate on 327 and tell us what does 327 tell us. Sarva Karana Karanam, that's my question. That is actually the question. So that can't be the answer. I'm asking, how does Krishna become the cause of remote? So what was the remote cause? The remote cause is when somebody did not do something that they were supposed to do. Okay? Prakriti kriyamanani guna sarvani guna karmani sarvasa ahankara vimunatma kartahamiti manyate. So that verse is saying that that we think that we are doing it, but actually Krishna does it, right? But I'm asking a little bit deeper. I'm going a little bit deeper into the question, and I'm asking that how can we, which words can we say in the support that, Krishna is the cause, is also the remote cause. I'll give you another example. Maybe because I gave accidents, it's not coming at that easily. Suppose there is a burglary in my house. I come back from office and there's a burglary in my house. And the thieves have come and they've stolen everything. And then we look at the closed circuit TV to find out who was there. So we find somebody masked had come and they just turned the knob of the door and they walked in. So if a person is just able to turn the knob of the door knob from outside and walk in, what does it tell you? What do you think had happened? Door was not locked, says, yeah. Forgot to lock the house. Now can you give me the verse from Bhagavad Gita? Forgot. You have to give me both. You have to give me the chapter and the verse. 15 is right. Is correct answer. But I don't know what you're telling me. Are you giving me the chapter 15 or are you giving me the verse 15? Yeah. Sarvasya chaham hidi sannivishto mata smriti jnanam Apo Hanam cha. What is the meaning of Apo Hanam? Would anybody type it out? Apo Hanam is what? Forgetfulness. So you see, Krishna becomes the remote cause. He's the cause of everything that happens. Not a blade of grass moves without the permission of Krishna. Okay? So we have to remember that. So now what happens is we'll try to make it simple here. Going back into the purport. So we understand, making it a little bit simple for you all, and that is that he goes to he expands himself, and then one of his expansion is actually lying on the Viraja river. And can you type it out and tell me what is the other name for the Viraja river? Question for you. What is the other name for the Viraja river? You can give it to me in English, or if you're a Sanskrit scholar, you can give it to me in Sanskrit. Causal ocean, says Sukamala Radhe Mataji and Supatam Mataji. Yes, and well, repeat. Okay, the question was, what is the name, another name for Viraja river? So it's known as causal ocean in English, or Karan, cause. Cause in English translates, in Sanskrit will become Karan. So it is called Karan Sagar. Okay, Karan Sagar. So that is where he is. So in the neutral stream of Viraja, forming the boundary between the spiritual and mundane realms, like between the spiritual and the material world, is the Viraja river. And what does he do? What does this Mahavishnu staying over there? What does he do? He casts his glance at the time of creation. And where does he cast his glance? Towards Maya. And we had read in the previous one that Krishna never consorts with this Maya energy. So he will not go and have a relationship with Maya. like that, intimate relationship with her. But instead, he will just cast a glance towards, right? And that glance is caught first by Radharani, who passes it on to Maya to take care of it, right? So he casts his glance at creation unto the limited shadow potency Maya, who is located far away from himself. So she stays away from him. And this glance we read in the previous last week, and also earlier this week. We said that this glance is called Shambhu, right? This glance is called Shambhu, the Lord of Pradhan, right? So, what exactly is Pradhan, right? That is something that we need to understand. And there was also a question as to what is Prakriti, Pradhan, and then what is Mahat Tattva, right? These were the questions that you had asked. Okay. So before we go into what is Mahat Tattva, what is Pradhan, etc., let us first see that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that this material world is made up of eight of his energies. He says that, right? Or substances. Does anybody remember what are those eight substances? Yes, Zalpa Mataji from Facebook. So Pradhan means the chief. And okay. So does anybody remember? Are you giving me in the chat? Okay. And if you're giving answers, please give the answer to the whole class because that's where I'm looking. Okay, Earth, Vayu, Jal. And Varshana Mataji, please post to the whole class. Don't post it to me. Then I have trouble reading. I have to go back and forth. Okay. So, sky, right? So, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. Bhumi apo analo vayu kham mano buddhirevacha ahankara ityame bhinna prakriti ashtada. Right? So, these are the elements, right? Eight that make up this material world. So everything in this material world is a combination. The material part of this material world is made up of a combination of earth, water, fire, air, ether, right? And we see them as different, right? You see there's earth, you see that there is water, you can't see air, but you can feel it, right? And then of course, mind, intelligence, false ego, like that, water, right? So in the beginning, what happens is that these elements are not separated out. Okay. So in the beginning, these elements are not separate. Again, a little bit difficult concepts to remember, but or to grasp, but you have to imagine that earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, all these eight are, just together, right? They're just together like that, and they are not differentiated. Differentiation in the sense that if I take a box and inside that box, I put a pen, I put a pencil, I put an eraser, I put a scale, you'll be able to look at all that and you'll be able to say, okay, this is a pen, this is a pencil, this is a, face to shoot, like that, you'll be able to tell and you will be able to differentiate, right? But in the beginning, you cannot differentiate that this is water, oh, here is the earth, and here is air, like that. You won't be able to differentiate that, right? So in the beginning, so what happens is that at the time of creation, when Brahma is creating, so things are there. Prior to Brahma's creating, things are already there. So this earth, water, fire, air, ether, they are already there, but their states are different. They might be in different state. So the first state in which they are there is there is no differentiation. You cannot differentiate between earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Okay. So when it is all these material elements are there, they are not able to be differentiated to each other. That state of materials is called pradhan. Okay, that is pradhan. When you're not able to distinguish between them. Okay. So that is pradhan. And then, so imagine that all this material is there, it's already created. They are already created, but they are not differentiated. You can't differentiate with them, but you can understand from the Shastras that earth, water, fire, air, ether is inside it, right? For example, even here, for in the material world, when there is this body, like for example, you are looking at me, okay, or look at yourself, look at your hand, right? So raise your hand and look at it. Now, what does biology tell you that the hand is made up of? What can you tell me? Blood. She says blood. Okay. Flesh. Sutapa says flesh. Okay. What else? What else do you think is there in the hand? Only blood and flesh? There are bones. Okay. When you're sending text messages, there's an option, Varshana Mataji, where you can send it directly to me, or you can say send to everyone. There should be a drop down there. And if you can't see it, then you should gang up with Sutapa Mataji and learn how to do that. Okay. So then there is bone, right? And then what does science tell us? What is inside our bones? There's nerves, okay, there's cells. And what is inside the bone? Marrow, right? So there's bone marrow there, right? So can you see the bone marrow? Can you see the blood? And do you agree that, okay, so what are the different kinds of creams that ladies apply on their hands? Come on, give us names of some creams. This should be an easy one. Not the brand names, but the type of creams that you apply. Nivea seems to be trending. I should go get a box of Nivea then. Moisture. Thank you so much. Yes, moisture. So why do you have to apply moisture to your anti-wrinkle? So why do you think you have to apply moisture to your hands? What is the reason? Why do you have to put moisture? But we were not born rough, right? When a baby is born, the baby is so soft. Skin loses water, exactly. So now you're telling me that in your hand there is also water that was lost, right? If you're saying skin loses water and then becomes thick, and I have to apply water from outside via the moisturizing cream, this means there must have been water in the hand also. Where is the water? Can you see the water? You can't see the water, right? Unless you're perspiring or something like that, right? So this is what we are saying, that when your material is in the state of pradhan, everything is there, and it's subtle. You cannot see it, and it's in that state. There's earth, water, fire, air, ether. It's concept to remember. There's earth, water, fire, air, ether. All 8 of them are there, right? But they are not separated. But you can understand that they are there. Just as you are understanding that when you raise your hand, that there is water also there. Where is the water? If there's water, it should drip and come out. No, but there is water in my hand. Similarly, in the pradhan also, there is, all those elements are there in the pradhan too. Okay? So the pradhan, now imagine there's some pradhan on one side, and we have our, and I hope that explains that to you, Varshana Mataji, what is pradhan. I repeated that for you. And then now what happens is that we have our Mahavishnu who's lying on the Viraja river, right? And he casts his glance on Pradhan, right? And Maya is there, right? Close by to the Pradhan. So when he casts that glance, and we said that that glance is the efficient cause, and that glance has got a name. And what is the name for that glance? Can somebody type it out and tell me what is the name for that glance? There was a name I gave to the glance. Shambhu, says Priyanka Sharma for 2000 points. Yes. So that glance is called Shambhu, right? And I'm going to take a verse and let me see. I'm going to pick up a few more verses from Brahma Samhita just to tell you a few things here. And I should start sharing my screen with you. And it's the famous verse from Brahma Samhita, Shiram yatha dadi vikar vishesha yogat, sanjayate nahi tatah pitag asti hetuhu, yah shambhutam tatha samupeti karya, govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So Brahma is praying to the Lord, and what he's saying is that just as milk is transformed into curd by the action of acids, right? You can add a little lemon or imli, tamarind, or you can add some old curd. The milk becomes curd. But then the result that comes from doing this, which is curd, is very different from the milk. Yet it is still milk, right? So if you are a vegan, which means I don't take any milk products, and if I give you curd and I say, hey, I transformed it, I added acid to it, but you can take it, they'll say, no, it is still a milk. It is still a milk product, right? So curd on the face of it and by the taste of it and by the structure of it is so different from milk, yet it is milk. So here this verse is saying that just as curd is milk and yet it is not milk, similarly Shambhu is also Krishna and yet he is not Krishna. Because after all, Shambhu also comes from Krishna. Shadashiva also comes from Krishna. So that way everything is Krishna actually. All of us are also Krishna because everything ultimately comes from Krishna. So he says that although he's come, and that I adore that Lord Govinda, right? And what does Shambhu do? Shambhu is very famous for, you know what? Shiva is famous for what? Can you write it down and tell me? How do you know Shiva as? He's famous for doing what? Giving boons. Okay, destruction, exactly, right? So we know that he will come and do the Tandav Nritya close to, when we have the destruction will come at the time of annihilation, he will dance and then things will be destroyed. So we know Shiva in that role. But now here Brahma Samhita is telling you that there's another role that Shiva plays. And he's actually that glance, right? So in this verse that we were reading today, we were talking about generation, right? We're talking about creation. And so you know here in the material world how creation happens. In 99.99% of the time, you require a male and you require a female, right? And how does reproduction happen? How does creation happen? That the semen from the male has to be deposited in the womb of the female, and the female gives birth. And we always say that the female has given birth, she has given birth, my daughter has given birth, but actually it is the male that gives birth. Because if the male is not there, the female cannot give birth on her own. The main cause is coming from the male. like that. So similarly here, now we are talking of birth at a different level, not of a puppy or of a human being or a tree or anything like that. We are talking about birth of this universe, creation of a very different kind, the original creation. But still, the process will still be the same. There will be a male that has to be joined with the female, right? And we know that here there is a male reproductive organ that is required to create, right? However, when it comes to Krishna, and a few weeks ago we had talked about Angani yasya sakalendriya pritimanti pachiyanti panti. So what happens is that Krishna's limbs and his body parts can perform the task, one body part can perform the task of some other body part. It is unimaginable, but we had talked a little bit that since we are a part and parcel of Krishna, Mame Vansho Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha, right? Yes, Vashana. So we had said that that uh, we are part and parcel of Krishna, so we will also have some of his qualities. And the example that I had given was that if I take a sandpaper and show it to you, just by looking at the sandpaper, you can tell me the texture. Is it coarse or is it fine? If I bring a fine silk sari and I show it to you, you will know. If I show you a cotton sari, you will know the difference between the two just by the eyes without even touching it, which means that your eyes can do the job of your skin. The job of skin is basically to touch like that, right? So we have got that thing in a limited sense, right? In a limited way, we can use one sense to perform the job of another. For example, eyes are used for, what are the purpose of the eyes? What does eyes give you? Can you write it down here in the chat window? What do your eyes do? And what do they see? So you have to remember, this is my organ of, right? This is my organ. My eye is my organ, right? So it's my sense organ, right? And every sense organ will have a object. So there's a sense organ, and there is an object of the sense, right? So this is my organ, right? And what do the sense objects do? What do eyes do? They go and look at objects. And what do they find about an object? These are jnanendriyas, right? So jnanendriyas will capture, right? Will capture some information about an object. So what information about an object do the eyes capture? What is it? What information about an object do the eyes capture? Can you yeah, color, size, okay, right? So basically, yeah, good. Let me see what version I said, right? Okay, so what your sense organs will have an object, right? So they will be looking at, senses are going, so there'll be an organ. So there is a sense of sight, right? There's a sense, you're sensing something. There's a sense of smell, right? So our nose, you cannot point a nose at, close your eyes and point your nose at something and you'll be able to tell what's the color and what's the size, right? Similarly, you can't look at something and tell you whether it is smelling good or not good. If you have a cold, then you can't distinguish between good smell and bad smell. Okay, so there is a sense of sight, there's a sense of smell, and for these senses, and so on and so forth, and for these five senses that we have, the knowledge acquiring senses, there are organs that will acquire that knowledge, and those organs are eyes and nose and ears and so on and so forth, right? But what exactly do they capture, right? So the nose is going to capture the aroma, right? Similarly, what the eyes are going to capture is the form, and the form is going to include the color, etc. also, right? So what these senses are, what are they capturing? That is known as Tanmatra. So there was a question there you had asked. What is Tanmatra? So that is, Tanmatra is a subtle thing, the concept of a form, the concept that things have a smell, the concept of sound. Those concepts, those subtle things are known as Tanmatra. Okay? So I was talking about that one organ, usually eyes are used for sensing the form. So there are Gyanendriyas, which are capturing the information. And then we have got Karmendriyas or working senses. Can you type and tell me how many working senses do we have? Five. Very good. Vaishana Mataji, and very good for figuring it out how to write your answers to everybody. Good. So, and how many knowledge acquiring senses or Gyanendriyas do we have? How many Gyanendriyas? How many Karmendriyas? Five, says Vindhyavali Mataji, and she's right. Okay, so there are Gyanendriyas and there are Karmendriyas. And so you will require some of your Karmendriyas to do procreation, right? The genitals are required by us to be able to procreate. Without that, we cannot. But Krishna can use any of his senses, any of his 10 senses he can use to perform the act of procreation. He doesn't need his genitals to do that. So how does Krishna do that? He impregnates with his eyes, through his glance, that glance, right? So now let's come back to this material world and we see how does the process, what is the process of impregnation involve? From science, we know that a sperm has to enter into the womb and combine with the cell, and an embryo is formed, hopefully, like that, right? Very simply put. So here also at a larger scale, creation is happening. So there has to be some sort of a sperm that has to come. Some sort of a seed has to be planted. So when Krishna casts his glance, in that glance, which we call as Shambhu, in that glance are all the Jiva souls. All the Jiva souls are there. So Krishna is there, and through Jiva soul, as well as the karma, as well as the time, karma, and all the Jiva souls, the concept of time also is, through his glance, goes towards the Pradhan. And so when this glance falls on Pradhan, then Pradhan is called Mahat Tattva. Okay? So Pradhan plus glance equal to Mahat Tattva. Okay? Pradhan plus glance equal to Mahat Tattva. Right? And then the third concept, which is there, which is not mentioned in this particular verse, but you should actually know, is Prakriti, right? So what has happened is that you had Pradhan, which has got everything in it, which has got earth, water, fire, air, ether. And now what we have done is we have now added something transcendental to it. What is the transcendental thing that gets added? Can you write it down below? Tell me. What was the transcendental thing that Krishna added or Mahavishnu added to Pradhan? What was the transcendental thing? I just told you, glance is fine. Glance is a very vague answer. I told you what is there in the glance. What are the things which are there in the glance? Tell me what's the transcendental thing. It's such a big giveaway. Come on, come on, come on. what is there that he puts into the pradhan so that it becomes Mahat Tattva? Through his glands. What are the things that come out of his glands? Three things I said. Do you remember? Okay, so we'll pause here. And instead of the creation process, we are going to talk about the destruction process first. Okay? So at the time of annihilation, this whole universe is gone. Okay? So the whole universe is gone and everything burns down. There are different ways in which annihilation happens. And let's assume it's the fire and everything is burned down in the fire. So what do you think happens to the soul? Because in the chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, it said, Na dahati pavakaha. Soul cannot be burned by fire. So where do all these souls go? They go back to Mahavishnu. The souls go back to Mahavishnu. They stay in his abdomen, right? So when he's casting the glance, what he does is that from the abdomen, the souls come out in the as part of his glance. So that's why I was saying the glance has got time, it has got the soul, and it has got the karma. So I was asking you the question that what is the transcendental, when Krishna glances at Pradhan, what is the transcendental thing that gets added there? It is the soul. So now we have got all these, you know, say um, my flour is there and I have, water is there and my masalas are there and hara dhania is there, everything is there. And I've added some currants, the raisins are also thrown in. Raisins are the soul. That state is known as Mahat Tattva. Now, remember, these are material elements. So they will be under the modes of material nature. Material things have got modes of material nature. Now, time is also there. So, all because of all these things, there is some agitation. And then what happens is that these things now begin to manifest earth, water, fire, air, ether. They get manifested. And then, of course, the soul is there. So, now this is known as Prakriti. This is Prakriti. Okay. But now from this Prakriti, shapes have to be made. Human beings have to be made, right? And plants have to be made, rivers have to be made, mountains have to be made, and so on and so forth. So then Brahma comes in and he does that. Now, Brahma doesn't need a female to produce. He produces things from his mental energy, Narada, but he can't be producing all the time. So that's why he says, ask the four Kumaras that come on, boys, create something. They say, no, 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 we don't want to get into that business. We want to go to Lord. We want to engage in that. And then he creates Manu, right? And then Manu is the first creature of mankind. And then through him, all these sub creations actually happen there, right? So that is the essence of this particular verse. I will stop here. I would highly encourage you to listen to the recording of this because it's a deep chapter, and we'll take it up again next week with your questions because it's 7:30. For those of you who are on Zoom, I'd like you to wait, right? And for those of you who are on Facebook, thank you so much for joining the call, and we'll meet again tomorrow at 6:30 in the morning to learn the recitation of chapter 17 of Bhagavad Gita. I'm assuming that those of you who took your verses have been practicing them and you'll be posting them at some time. Okay, so I'm going to end the live stream over here. I'm going to end